turn my microphone on. Hey, let's stand to our feet, everybody. Come on, we're gonna worship. Hey, if you're in the room or you're joining us online, we are so glad you're here. Would you join me in singing this out? I searched the world. I searched the world, but he couldn't fill me. Oh, man's empty praise and treasures of faith are never enough. You came along, put me back together. Every desire is now satisfied in your love. 'Cause there's nothing, come on, we say, oh, there's nothing better than you. Oh, there's nothing, nothing. Oh, there's nothing, no. That's right.
I'm just going to share a verse that came to me this week as we were preparing for worship, and it's in Isaiah 43:18 through 19. Forget the former things. Do not dwell on the past. See, I am doing a new thing. Now it springs up. Do you not perceive it? I am making a way in the wilderness and streams in the wasteland. This verse is a reminder of God's promise to make a way and to care for us, even when things seem hopeless or empty. It's his way of saying, I've got you, even when you can't see a way forward. If you trust him, he'll lead us and provide for us and give us what we need, no matter how hard things get. So as we continue to worship, let that verse sink in and speak to your heart. Let it remind you that even in the toughest times, God is making a way and providing what you need. Just rest in that promise as we worship together. I remember how you provided, how you held me through the night, and I remember how you sustained me when you stepped in to save my life. If I knew then what I know now, I would be still and let you work it out. Jesus, I was tossed in the water, but I never went under, 'cause you were always on time. Jesus, when I went through the fire, you were right there beside me, 'cause you were always on time. You were always, always, always on time. You were always, always, always on time. And I remember how you carried when I couldn't take a step. And I remember how you loved me when I couldn't love myself. Jesus, I was tossed in the water, but I never went under, 'cause you were always on time. Jesus, when I went through the fire, you were right there beside me, 'cause you were always on time. You were always, always, always on time. You were always, 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 oh yes he is. You were always, always, always on time. You were always, always, always on time. Let us trust your way and your promises. There's never been a day, never been a minute, there's never been a moment that he wasn't in it. There's never been a time that you didn't see me through, God. So I worship you. There's never been a day, never been a minute, there's never been a moment that you weren't in it. When we sing this out together, we say, Jesus, I was tossed in the water, but I never went under, 'cause you were always, yes. And Jesus, when I went through the fire, you were right there beside me, 'cause you were always on time. I know who I am, 'cause I know who you are. The cross of salvation was only the start. Now I am chosen, free and forgiven. I have a future, and it's worth the living. 'Cause I wasn't made to be tended in a grave. I was called by name, born and raised back to life again. I was made for more. So why would I make a bed in my shame when a fountain of grace is running my way? I know I am yours, and now
to be tending a grave. I was called by name, born and raised back to life again. I was made for more. So why would I make a bed in my shame when a fountain of grace is running my way? I know I am yours. I was made for more.
All right, well, we had an awesome time at summer camp this past week, and they made a little video for you. So go ahead and sit down.
Good morning, Green Valley. We would like to thank everyone for coming to church on this lovely day. We also would like to welcome everyone from the
Family Center, Cafe, or watching online. We'd also like to take a moment to welcome anybody that's new today.
We also have a couple very important announcements all the way from Camp Alta.
Hello there. We are having so much fun at camp. We wish you could all be here to just experience the joy and the laughter that we've been having. We are having so much fun. We're connecting with each other. We're getting a little competitive, and we're just having a great time. And we have seen so many kids just connecting with each other, with leaders, and ultimately with Jesus through worship, messages, small group. And so it's just an incredible time. Thank you to those who are praying for us, and a special thank you to those who gave towards scholarships. We have a good amount of kids here who are only here because of you. So we just thank you. All of the giving that you do to Green Valley goes straight into the ministry that we do each and every day. So thank you for that. And there's 4 ways that you can give. So we just thank you.
That's right. And here at Green Valley, we believe so much in connection and community because we know that the best form of community is a life centered around Jesus. And so we want you to know there's some really exciting opportunities coming up to connect in the fall. So go check out our website, go check out our app. There's all kinds of classes that are open for registration for literally anybody. And we want you to be a part of it.
Yes, and back to our students.
Thank you so much for joining us for announcements today.
And now we're going to invite Pastor John to continue the series Imago Day. But before he does, stand up and hug the person next to you. Okay, cool.
That was good. We can clap.
Well, good morning. It's great to see you this morning. Hey, before we jump into this, would you agree that we have amazing youth leaders here at Green Valley? We have the best. Both staff, volunteers, but just investing in our next generation, it is amazing. And my heart is full this morning. We're so blessed for that. Also, we're going to be doing communion at the end of service today. And when you came in, the ushers were handing out the elements here. If you didn't get one of these, you can raise your hand right now and the ushers can bring you one just so you have that for the end of the service. Hey, we've been in this series called Imago Dei, which in Latin means image of God. And we've been looking at this truth. We've been going through this truth that every single person was created in the image of God. And we can see that right at the beginning of scriptures in Genesis, and it's been sort of our theme scripture for this series, and we'll put it on the side screens here. But in Genesis 1:27, it said, "So God created mankind in his own image. In the image of God, he created them. Male and female, he created them." So we've been looking in this series at this idea, Imago Dei, that we are created in God's image. And we've been looking at these stories, going through stories in the Bible of how these different characters actually lived out their Imago Dei, lived as a reflection of God, and how it impacted their lives, but also impacted the lives of others. So far, we looked at people like Enoch, this person who had this intimate relationship with God. It says he walked with God. This person named Hosea, whose obedience was just stood out in terms of an image bearer of God. He's known for this incredible obedience. Then we looked at this woman named Rahab, who we learned that even though sin can distort our image, it can never destroy it. And through God's grace, we don't have to live in our past, but we can live going forward in the future. We also talked about Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego and learned through that story how our image is refined and brought forth often through trials and tribulations in our life. Then last week, Scott and Rebecca together did a message that was a great message. It talked about the power of team and collaboration, that when image bearers come together, the power that is in making a difference in our world. And they looked at the story of Deborah and Barak. It was a great message. So today, as we continue, I want to talk about a person in the scriptures. Her name was Hannah in the Old Testament. And we're going to look at her story because we're going to touch on something that I think is one of the big, significant realities of life. And even as somebody of faith, kind of the center of our faith walk as well. But even if you don't have a faith, it's just this big reality in life. And what I want to talk about today that we're going to learn through the story of Hannah is the reality of waiting. How many of you like waiting? Some of you are probably going, come on, hurry up. I got stuff to do here. Get this over with, right? I mean, the fact of the matter is we live in an instantaneous world now. Everything is so fast. We don't want to wait for anything, right? I mean, you think about it. I was ordering something online a couple of days ago, and now when you see, at one point, 2 days shipping was fast. Now that's slow, right? It's like, why can't I get it this afternoon, I love this meme. I think a lot of us can relate to it here. The reality is the adult version of an ice cream truck. How excited we get when the Amazon truck comes pulling up, right? The reality is that life is full of waiting. In fact, I was thinking about like the top things that we can just expect to wait at if we're going to go do something that we just know we're going to wait. And I just got 4 of them I'll rattle off. These are just my list. Number 4 is the DMV, right? Anybody ever wait at the DMV? Even if you make an appointment, you're going to wait there. Second one is, how about an airport? You want to get there 2 hours early, obviously, but what are you going to do most of the time you're there? You're waiting, right? Number 2 is the emergency room. God forbid you're ever in the emergency room, but they're saying the average time that you spend if you go for whatever is about 6 hours. So bring your sleeping bag if you go to the emergency room. And the number 1 place that you can expect to wait, Disneyland, happiest place on earth, right? There's nothing like standing in line with 2,000 people for 2 hours to take a ride that lasts 2 minutes, and all it costs you is way too much, right? Fact is that when you think about waiting, you think about impatience. And I think for a lot of us, I was thinking about this message, and I was thinking about like driving, right? Impatient. Anybody here an impatient driver? Anybody tailgate somebody on the way to church here today? If you did, we have pastoral partners that would pray with you after service. I would love to do that. But the reality is that so many of us live life like we drive, impatiently. We want to get to point A to B in the quickest route, in the fastest amount of time. But the reality, friends, is that in God's economy, God doesn't necessarily want to just get us from point A to B. He wants to grow us in our image. And so often the way that he does that is in his waiting room. And we're going to look at that today, of what that actually looks like, of how God uses waiting as a big part of how he brings out his image within us. So here's our big idea today that we're going to look at, and it's simply this, that God things come to those who wait. So we're going to look at this story, as I said, about Hannah. I'm just going to paraphrase most of it. But Hannah lived, you can read her whole story in 1 Samuel, the first and second chapters of 1 Samuel. But in a nutshell, she was living in a time where Israel had judges. There was no kings at that time. They were still being ruled by judges. And Hannah was married to a Levite, and his name was Elkanah. And so Hannah struggled for many, many years that she could not have children. She was barren. And the Bible says that she would pray over and over and be asking God to have a son, to bring her a child. And it was a big thing in that culture at that time, if you think about it, because it was this identity thing, and children were such a big part of the tradition and of the family and passing on the family genes and so on and so forth. And so there was a lot of shame that was associated with somebody who couldn't have kids. And so Hannah was barren and was struggling. And the Bible says that she would over and over be asking God and pouring her heart out to God to give her a child, but it just wasn't happening. And it says that the family, her and her husband, their family would go back and forth to Shiloh, which is the temple there, and they would pray. She would pray in the temple. And so it was just this whole thing of she's waiting for this child and waiting for God, and yet it wasn't happening. So then it says that it finally comes to a head, and she's in the temple. And the priest, his name is Eli, is there, and they're doing their sacrifices and all this, and she finally just loses it. And this is where we pick up the story, where Eli is there watching her as she's in the temple praying to God. And this is what it says. It says, "Now Eli the priest was sitting on his chair by the doorpost of the Lord's house. In her deep anguish, Hannah prayed to the Lord, weeping bitterly. And she made a vow saying, 'Lord Almighty, if you will only look on your servant's misery and remember me, and not forget your servant, but give her a son, then I will give him to the Lord for all the days of his life, and no razor will ever be used on his head.'" Now, at first glance there, it looks like she's kind of doing a deal with God. Like, if you do this, God, I'll do that, right? You ever say a prayer to God and kind of promise him things if he comes through? You ever do that? God, if you get me out of this, I promise I'll go to church more. God, maybe, if you get me out of this, God, I'll stop smoking, I promise. Or, God, if you get me out of this, I'll become a pastor, right? It's like, that's how I became a pastor, by the way. At first glance, you think that she's doing a deal, but that's not what's happening here. What she's doing is what is known as the Nazirite vow, and it was a tradition that people would make for a period of time, would make a commitment to God that would abstain from certain things. It was a very intense commitment to God. Don't cut your hair, don't eat certain things, so on and so forth. Just different things that you would abstain from. Samson's another perfect example of the Nazirite vow that he lived. So what Hannah is doing here isn't doing a deal with God. She's recognizing that whatever she's waiting for, whatever's going to come her way, is going to be a gift from God. It's not hers. It's not to her end. And this is what's reflected in his prayer. But then it goes on to say that in the next verses, it goes on to say that the priest is watching her pray this prayer. And something interesting is happening because she's moving her mouth, but no words are coming out. So it's coming from somewhere very deep within her that she's praying to God. So Eli, it says that the priest, he thinks she's intoxicated. And so he yells at her and says, "Hey, how long are you going to be in here? You're in the temple. How long are you going to be in here intoxicated, doing this?" To which then Hannah very quickly clarifies what's going on. And this is what it says. She says, "Not so, my Lord." She's talking to Eli. "I am a woman who is deeply troubled. I have not been drinking wine or beer. I was pouring out my soul to the Lord. Do not take your servant for a wicked woman. I've been praying here out of my great anguish and grief." When Eli heard these words, it goes on to say that he recognized that this woman was really struggling and distraught and bringing this to God. And so he tells Hannah, "Hey, go ahead and go, but just so you know, I'm going to be praying that God answers your prayer as well." It says that Hannah left and that she was comforted after bringing this prayer and experiencing Eli's words. And it says she went home and this grief was kind of lifted, like she had some hope after this experience in this prayer. Shortly thereafter, it says that Hannah got pregnant and had a child. And this child's name, she named it Samuel, which means I asked the Lord, or translations is, the Lord heard me. The Lord heard me. And when we see the rest of the story of what Samuel did and the impact he had in this world, I can't overstate the impact he had, but it all started with Hannah's faithfulness in the waiting room. It all started with her in the wait. So today what I want to do just for the next few moments here is I want to look at some lessons from the waiting room. The 3 lessons that we can learn when we're in waiting, because all of us are waiting for something. And so 3 lessons from the waiting room, and as you know, as we talked about in this series, we've been trying to do it from 3 different vantage points when we hear these stories. What does this say to me about God? What does this say to me about myself? And what does this say to me about how I see others? So we're going to look at these 3 lessons with those vantage points in mind from the waiting room. First lesson that I want to look at today is this, is that waiting on God is to trust God's timing. There's a universal truth in the scriptures that's hard to accept sometimes, and that is this truth, that God's timing is not our timing. You know, if you look back at this story and you read how long Hannah was dealing and waiting for this child, it says in verse 7, it says, this went on year after year. I thought about that. Wow, year after year. When I'm waiting for something, whether it's I want something or I want to get out of something, I don't want to wait a minute, much less a year. And I think if we were all honest, all of us, we would feel the same way. I think for a big part of us, when it comes to God and our mentality to God, we have a microwave mentality, meaning we want to set the time and we don't want it to be more than a minute. But what the scriptures show us, friends, is that God utilizes the process of his waiting room in order to develop us. And you see that all through scripture. Look at Joseph. Joseph, it took 23 years between the time that he had a dream that he was going to save his people for that dream to come to fruition. It took 420 years for the Israelites to be free from Egyptian slavery. It took Moses 40 years to get his people out of Egypt. It took David 21 years from the time he was called to crown king of Israel. Jesus himself lived in obscurity for 30 years before he started his ministry. Even the Apostle Paul, 8 years between his conversion and doing ministry. And then there's us. And then there's you and I. As I said, all of us are waiting for something. Some of you here are in the waiting right now in God's waiting room, right now. Maybe you're waiting for guidance. You're saying, okay, God, what direction should I go in my life? Maybe you're waiting for help. God, I'm in this situation and I feel stuck. When is it going to get better? And maybe I'm just here waiting for that. Maybe you're waiting for a healing. Maybe there's a health issue and you're saying, hey, God, how is this going to turn out for me? Maybe you're like Hannah, you're literally waiting to have a child and it hasn't happened yet. Or conversely, maybe you're waiting to get rid of your kids, like they can finally move out of the house, right? I remember when I was growing up, one time I got in a fight with my parents and I told my dad that I was going to run away from home and he reminded me that I was 18. That's not running away, it's called moving out. That's what he said. Whatever you're waiting for, maybe it feels like it's been years. Maybe it has been years. And if that's you today, and if you're in this place of waiting, I just want to encourage you with this, that God sees you and he cares. You know, it said that Hannah, when she left, it said that before she got pregnant, it said in verse 19, it said something really, really powerful. It said, and the Lord remembered her. I love that because when I think about it, it's like, she was on God's mind. And it's the same for us too. When we're going through things in our life, when we're struggling, we got to remember that we're in the waiting room. It doesn't mean God doesn't care, and it doesn't mean God doesn't see you. It's just that sometimes, and most of the time, he's not going to look at finding the shortest, quickest way to you to get through it. Because, friends, as it turns out, not only is God's timing not our timing, so often his goals are not our goals. See, my goal when it comes to waiting is I want to get out of it as fast as I can. I want relief fast. I want what I want fast. I want to go through it fast. But God's goal isn't about fast, it's about faith. You see, he wants to grow our faith. And so often it's in the waiting room. He wants to strengthen our faithful walk. And so often it's in the waiting room. He wants to grow our capacity to handle the plans he has for us in life. He's preparing us, and so often that happens in the waiting room. You know, as I reflect, I shared about a month ago, if you were here, maybe if you weren't, it might be news to you, but I am going to be stepping down at the end of next month. I'm going to be retiring, being on staff here at church. I'm not leaving the church. I'm just stepping down, being on staff. And if I look back over this time in my 23 years here, I've been here for almost 24 years, some on staff and then and volunteering. I remember it starts to get like reflective at this time in my life. And I remember those first 3 or 4 years that I was here serving. Started as a volunteer. And it was quickly within the first year that I was here that I felt God was calling me into ministry vocationally. I felt like he was telling me, okay, John, this is your calling. I want you to work in ministry. And so I put it out there to the staff here, and they were considering it. And I thought, really, this is my calling. I'm going to be, a minister here. I'm going to serve God through the church, work here. And I was sure of it. And then they came back and told me that they felt like they chose somebody else for a role that they were looking at, and they didn't choose me. And it was a good call. But I just remember going, what? Wait, I thought for sure that this was the path you're calling me on. And yet at the time, it wasn't. And 3 years, I continued to serve here, and then a door opened after 3 years that I ultimately came on staff. But as I stand here today and I look back over that time, what I recognize is some of the most significant time of my 24 years here was those 3 years that I was waiting. And the reason is because I recognize now what I didn't know then, and that was God was preparing me, and I wasn't ready to be on staff. I needed to be humbled. I needed to grow my heart. There was so much about me that I thought I was ready, but I wasn't ready. And I'm so glad, as much as it was hard to wait, I'm so glad God put me through that. See, come to find out, so often, we're not waiting for God. God is waiting for us. And that's a whole different perspective. So my question for you on this first lesson from the waiting room is this, is that are you willing, if you're waiting for something right now, are you willing to trust God's timing? Second truth is this that we learn, or second lesson from the waiting room. Not only is it about trusting God's timing, but the second one is waiting on God presents a choice for us. It puts a choice into our hands. You ever done something in your life that you regretted because you didn't wait? You ever do that? I was at Starbucks a few years back, and went into the store to buy coffee, and it was packed in there. There was just a bunch of people, so I was really far back in line, and I'm standing there, and of course I'm impatient. I'm in a hurry. I'm going to go. Guy's standing behind me, and I turn around to the guy and say, I'm not going to wait. I'm just going to go through the drive-thru. Guy's like, okay, whatever. So I get out of my car, go around to the drive-thru, get around, and there's only one car in front of me. I was like, man, I'm so glad I got out of that store. I'm going to be in and out of here like boom. So I get up there. This guy orders 2 coffees, but he apparently scrounged up all the change in his car, and so he was going to pay for it with all dimes and nickels and quarters or whatever. And he takes it out, and he drops it on the ground in front of the window. And I don't know if you've ever been in there. There's no room to get out of your car, but he got out of his car. And he gets down there and he gets on the ground. There's money under his car. And I'm sitting there going, I got two choices here. I'm either going to back out of this drive-through. And I don't know if you ever tried to back out of a drive-in or drive-through. That's not an easy thing to do. Or I'm going to honk at him and yell him and tell him to get out of the way because it's life or death. I need my coffee, man. There was a third option, and that was to be a good guy and get out and help him, which was like, okay, I'll get out and help him. So there I am on the ground with him, helping him pick up his change for his coffee. And so I'm down there, and mind you, now we're about 15 minutes into this thing, right? And I'm down there on the ground, and he asked me, he goes, hey, I think I could get enough change. Can I buy you a cup of coffee? And I was like, no, I'm fine. As I looked up, I see the guy that was behind me in line sitting out on the patio, drinking his coffee, and he's like waving at me, and I'm on the ground picking this guy's change up. And I thought to myself, man, I hope he burns his lip on his coffee, you know? Things don't go well when you don't have coffee. I'm just telling you. All I remember thinking to myself is, man, I wish I would have waited. I wish I would have waited. You know, when we're in God's waiting room, we have a choice. We have one of two choices. We can stay and we can wait, or we can take matters into our own hands. I love what Stephen Furtick says, the pastor. He says, the only thing harder than waiting on God is wishing that you had. And I think if we were all honest with each other, when we look back in our lives and maybe some regrets that we might have, there's times that you could go, I wish I would have waited for God. I could give you a whole list of them. Because here's the truth. Here's the truth that I've learned the hard way. And that is the minute I take matters into my own hands, I'm taking them out of God's hands. I'll say it again. The minute that you take matters into your own hands, you're taking it out of God's hands. Now, let me be clear about something here, though. I'm not saying that waiting means you're powerless and that you should do nothing. That's not what I'm saying at all. Actually, we have a lot of power when it comes to waiting, a power that God gives us. And Hannah shows us what that looks like to have the power to wait. And it's in two ways. The first one is that we have the power of prayer. This was Hannah's lifeline, was her prayer life to God. And she doubled down on that. It's amazing to me because this is the thing she kept doing, was she was praying over and over. It says that she went into the temple and was praying in the temple. That's unheard of then. This is the only story in the Bible that you see that somebody's in the temple praying directly to God. It's usually through the priest. And yet she's doing it. And her prayers were not rote. They weren't formal. They were raw and gritty. She was pouring it out to God, like real stuff. Have you ever just had stuff pent up in your life before, and you're talking to somebody and you just kind of throw up on them because you're so like, and it just all comes out? Well, that's kind of what she was doing. Because another spiritual truth is that we can throw up on God. It's okay, and He's okay with it. Because it's a real relationship with God. And we can be real. All you have to look at is David and the Psalms and Lamentations, and you can see we can bring everything to God, the good, the bad, the ugly, whatever it is. We can do that because God cares. And He listens. And she came and she just poured out to God. And I think if you look at her prayer life, because after she has Samuel, if you go to chapter 2 in 1 Samuel, you see this beautiful prayer of gratitude that she writes, which is a song that mirrors Mary's prayer in Luke when she found out that she was going to have Jesus. So there's this amazing prayer life that Hannah has that she doesn't move away from during this time. She leans into it even more. So what happened is, and this is what is really important, she goes from not just waiting on God, she's actually waiting with God because she's connected to Him. And she does ask. She brings it to Him. God, if it's your will, give me a son. And God always answers. Sometimes it's yes, sometimes it's no, sometimes it's not yet, but whatever it is, God will respond. This is why Paul says, don't worry about anything. Instead, pray about everything and be thankful. Prayer is like a reset for us in the waiting room. So often we're on this journey and we're waiting and we're tired and we need a break. And prayer gives us that reset to God and reminds us that God's in it with us. The second thing that she has is not just the power of prayer, but the power of perseverance. See, friends, Hannah, she's going along, and this has been years that she doesn't have this prayer answered, and yet year after year, she's not just waiting. Year after year, she continues to go to the temple. Year after year, she continues to bring it to God. Year after year, she continues to live out her faith and stay faithful and obedient to God. Year after year. In other words, what I would call that is active waiting. She didn't just stop. I thought about that going back to my time here and that time when I didn't get hired here and I was disappointed, and I was kind of in this place where I was like, okay, what's next? And I got the best advice ever from one of our elders here, a good friend of mine, because he was like, okay, so you're passionate about ministry. You didn't get hired here, but you feel like you're serving, called to serve, and I do believe that. He goes, just keep showing up. He said, just keep showing up. And that's what I did. It just kept showing up and just kept doing the same thing, regardless of the capacity in which I was doing it, hired or volunteer, no difference. He just said, just keep showing up. And I thought about that because it was the best advice, because that allowed me to put myself in the position that God could work on me. And I didn't even know it by just showing up. One of the best images of our Imago Day, being made in the image of God, if you're wondering what that actually looks like, you could go to the book of Galatians 5. It talks about the fruit of the Spirit, the work God does in us through his Spirit, through a relationship with Jesus. And 3 of the fruit that it talks about that come out in us is patience, self-control, and faithfulness. Patience, self-control, and faithfulness. Let me just say this. Those are the top 3 ingredients to have perseverance. And it's an amazing dynamic that God does for us when it says that the more that I persevere, the more patience, the more self-control, and the more faithfulness I have. And the more patience and self-control and faithfulness, the more I can persevere. And it just starts with just showing up. If you're here today and you're waiting for something right now, my encouragement would just be like my friend's encouragement to me. If that's you today waiting for something, it's keep showing up. Maybe you're in a place where you don't have a job. And you've been trying to get a job and you've been waiting to get that employment. And my encouragement to you is keep showing up. Keep interviewing. Keep sending out resumes. Keep networking. Maybe you're waiting for your finances to get better, and you're in a funky place, and your finances, and you feel stuck, and and you go, how am I ever going to dig out of this? Is it ever going to get any better? My encouragement to you is keep showing up. Just keep showing up. Doing those things that God calls us to do to have and manage our finances. Maybe you're here today and there's a relationship in your life that's broken, that you've been waiting for it to get better. Maybe it's your marriage. And you've just been waiting. God, how long is this going to be before this gets better? And is it going to get any better? My encouragement, if you're waiting in a relationship that needs some fixing, my encouragement is keep showing up. Maybe it's marriage ministry. Maybe it's counseling. Maybe it's just, taking steps to be more intentional in it. Bringing it to God. Maybe you're in a place that you have a health issue right now. And you're waiting, going, God, is this going to get any better? How is this going to, heal? Am I going to be healed? What's happening here? And if that's you today, my encouragement is just keep showing up. Keep bringing it to God. Keep asking God. Surround yourself with people that journey with you so you're not alone. Maybe you're here today and you're dealing with grief, that you've experienced a loss in your life and you're waiting for this feeling to go, to say, is this ever going to get any better? And if that's you today, my encouragement is this, to keep showing up. To keep showing up. Maybe get into grief share or talk to somebody about it again. Don't do it alone. Maybe it's an addiction and you've been waiting And it seems like you take 2 steps forward and 3 steps back every time, and you're wondering, am I ever going to really overcome this? My encouragement to you is to keep showing up. That's why Thursdays, everybody is welcome at Celebrate Recovery, and it doesn't matter if it's 1 day, 1 week, or 10 years. Keep showing up. Maybe you're in a place in your life and you don't believe, and you're on this journey and you're waiting to find that real thing in your life that brings contentment. You've tried all kinds of other things, and in your mind you're like, hey, there's got to be something more. And you're waiting to find that thing that finally goes, this is what life is all about. And if that's you today, my encouragement would be keep showing up. Maybe it's keep coming back to church or ask those important questions about God. We have an alpha class that's coming up at the end of August that starts. That's a foundational faith class, and it is amazing. Whether you've been a believer forever or not at all, it is a great step to get into. Maybe you're alone and you've been alone and you don't have a lot of friendships and relationships, and you're waiting to go, hey, am I always gonna be alone, or am I ever gonna get connected with people? If that's you today and you're waiting for that, my encouragement is keep showing up. We got Wednesday nights starting, as you heard as well, our men's and women's Bible studies. That is all about each other. Keep showing up. And God's promise in that, friends, is that if we do, in that waiting, showing up, that he's going to do things that we can't even imagine he's going to do in our lives. This choice thing comes down to a question if you're waiting today. If you're in God's waiting room today, the question is simply, am I going to trust God's timing and lean into his power to be able to wait, or am I going to take matters into my own hands? Last one is that waiting on God is worth the wait. It's trusting in his timing, and it does create a choice, but if we wait on God, it is worth the wait. Remember, God is wanting us to take us through something and that transforms us, and not just get us through something. When we come to waiting, we want to get out. God wants us to come out transformed. And the beautiful thing about this transformation, when our Imago Day starts to shine through, the amazing thing is it doesn't just have an impact on us, it has an impact on everyone around us. Hannah got to a place where she kept her promise to God. And look at what it says. After Samuel got to an age, she gave him over to God. This is what it says. She says, I prayed for this child, and the Lord has granted me what I asked of him. So now I give him to the Lord. For his whole life he will be given over to the Lord. Then it says, and he worshiped the Lord there. We don't hear much about Hannah after those first few chapters of 1 Samuel, but we do hear about Samuel, and Samuel ended up being one of the most integral people in God's plan to bring Jesus into this world. He became the last judge of Israel and the first prophet. He helped to establish the monarchy, first with Saul, but then King David, whose lineage brought Jesus into this world. He was instrumental in that. Samuel's in the Hall of Faith if you look in Hebrews. But here's the thing, none of it would have happened if it wasn't for Hannah and her patient waiting. Think about that. You see, Hannah gave over to God what was God's, and that was her son. If you think about that and go, wow, she prayed for this, she waited for this, and then she gives him away. But what Hannah understood is the real result, the real purpose, the real gold in waiting is to glorify God. And then it's become more and more into God's image, because that is his plan. And that happens so often in the waiting. If I stand back and I reflect on the 23 years that I was here, and I get to stand up here today completely humbled and grateful for the 20 years that I was able to be on staff here. And you know what? I look back, and it was that waiting, that 3 years that made all the difference in the world for me in terms of being able to do that. And if it's you today, and if you're in that place that maybe there's something that you don't see it right now because you're in the waiting, just trust Just trust that God has big plans for you, plans that you may not even imagine for yourself, and that he cares about you, and that he remembers you. We're going to do communion right now as we close this service, and I think this is a perfect ending to this topic of waiting. You know, Jesus sat with his disciples the night before he was betrayed. And he knew, not only with his disciples, but he knew for all believers that people are going to be in this lifelong journey of waiting. And so he sat with his disciples one night. And he wanted them to remember his immense love and commitment to them through communion. And I just want to say too, if you don't know what communion is about or don't feel comfortable or it's new to you, don't feel obligated to do this. You very much can, but you don't have to, so don't feel like you have to do that. But it is a way that we're able to remember God's sacrifice for us, which I can tell you helps navigate the waiting times in life. Jesus took bread and he broke it, blessed it, and he gave it to his disciples and said, "This is my body that's broken for you. Take this. Let's all take this together." Then he took the cup and he said, "This is my blood that's shed for you." If you wonder whether I'm in it with you, if you wonder whether I care about you, if you wonder how much or if I love you, remember this, because there's no greater love than to give one's life for another. Let's take the cup together. Heavenly Father, we're here in this moment today, God. And I know in this room there are all kinds of different stories and experiences and different places people are at in their waiting. And God, wherever anybody is today, I thank you for the fact that you care for every single person and where they're at and every detail of where they're at, because you love us that much. And God, I just ask for our journeys of waiting, that wherever we are, that you give us that power and that peace that comes through your presence, that you are there walking alongside, and that you've got big plans for us, and it's in the waiting that you're developing us to be able to experience those plans. God, put people in our lives that journey with us so we don't wait alone. We need each other on this journey to help us to persevere, God. And we just thank you that you call us worthy to make an impact of your plan for this world. And we don't ever forget that, even in the waiting. We love you, Jesus, and it's in his name that we pray, and everyone says, amen. Why don't you go ahead and stand? We're going to leave here in a second, but I just wanted to leave you with, we have pastoral partners up front if you need prayer, and it's always an honor for them to pray with you. So if you need anything, come up and have prayer. Great to see you today. I hope you have a wonderful afternoon, and we will see you next Sunday. God bless you. Take care.